Can you hear me? So my talk for today is kick tolerance for well design and well control. So first of all, I thank the committee for inviting me. I am very happy and very privileged. Thank you very much. Before I start, last night Okay, welcome, thank you. So last night I was checking what is required of me to give a keynote speech. And the internet, Google and AI gives many reasons and gives advice. So this is a summary of what I'm supposed to do today to convince you of my subject. So it says you have to talk about a current subject, something that is important in the industry, which is why I chose kick tolerance. Knowledge of the audience. You should know your audience. I don't know you, but I spoke to a few people and you are interested in drilling, so that's number 2, valid. Deep expertise, knowledge. I don't claim to be an expert, by the way. I just have very little knowledge. So, captivating delivery, convince the people who listen to you. And entertainment, tell jokes. Very difficult to tell jokes when you talk about something scientific. And give stories. So I'm going to give you stories of the subject that I'll do. And strong connection with the audience needs. I know you have a drilling business here, but it's not very strong. So I'll try and hopefully help in this area. And finally, it says the best speech is between 45 minutes to 60 minutes. Now I'll try and make it less than 45 minutes so you have time to ask me questions. So these are the requirements from Google. Okay, so with kick tolerance, basically it's safety. So on the left-hand side, this is a rig in Venezuela that they were drilling with negative kick tolerance, and the people did not know what kick tolerance was. And on the right-hand side, some are really beautiful. The hole is exactly the same depth, but you can see the rig is perfect. So this is what we call, okay, application of kick tolerance, negative and positive. Now, there are 2 types of kicks. So this is just a basic introduction. 2 types of kicks we encounter in drilling. The first type is called swap kick, which I'll talk first about, and the second type is called drilling kicks. And a kick is quite simple. Basically, you drill, formation of fluids, oil or gas come in, and they give you pressurized surface, and you shock in the well, and you try and get rid of it. That's the principle of kicks and well control. Very simple, really. Okay? So the two types are completely different. But luckily, the mathematics is exactly the same. And this is where some people get confused and they criticize the idea of kick tolerance. So I'm trying to expose it and explain it to you, so hopefully if you get involved in well design, any well, you can apply this and you get a perfect well. Basically, if you apply it correctly, your well will be drilled with no problems. So the first one is swap kick. Now, forget about the graphics, but in simple terms, a swap kick, you drill and some gas comes into the well, but you don't know. So that's what we call swapping. Okay? During connection, whatever, you suck gas, and this gas remains in the well. This is a red. And you don't know. You have no idea. The well is at a depth of 10,000 feet, or 15,000 feet, or 20,000 feet, and the kick came at the bottom. And then as you continue circulating, at some stage, the kick will travel. And as the kick travels up the well, the pressure in the kick will reduce. And then eventually, the pressure in the kick will be exactly equal to the hydrostatic head of mud above it. So at that point, the gas will come out of solution and it will make the well at surface flow. And that's the principle of kick detection. So that's what we call swap kick. Swap kicks are the most dangerous kicks because you have no idea when they are coming. And then when you realize you have a swap kick, it becomes really difficult to control unless you know what you are doing. But luckily, the mathematics involved is quite straightforward and can be applied to drilling kicks. So we're going to define now what kick tolerance is. So for practical purposes, we define kicks basically as the maximum kick you can take without fracturing the open hole. And we take a point in the open hole, which is the point below the last casing, because that's the weakest point. So in the earth, as you drill deeper, the rock becomes stronger because of compaction. There are many ways in which you define kick tolerance, but the first definition is the most correct one and easy to follow, and you can apply it practically. There are other definitions like maximum allowable pore pressure, maximum allowable mud weight, maximum hole depth. They are all good definitions, but they're not as good as the first one, and they are derivatives of the first one. Okay? So I will concentrate on the first definition. And the actual maths involved, as you will see in a moment, really straightforward. So, what are the elements of kick tolerance? So we teach this to new engineers when they join the oil industry. They may be chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, or geologists, and we teach them because this is very important they understand the elements. So the elements of kick tolerance are the formation pressure, which we call pore pressure, because that determines the amount of kick you have and the pressure in it. And the fracture gradient at the casing shoe, because if the fracture gradient is weak, then you'll have fracture and you will have underground blowout. And the mud density. So the higher the mud density used, the less likely you have a kick, or the kick will become smaller. Okay? And the type of well. Is the well exploration or is development? Okay? So for each one, we need to design the well differently. So, the volume of influx, how much kick you have, it depends on underbalance. So this is basically Darcy law, the difference between the formation pressure and the mud weight. So we call this underbalance or overbalance. If there is more underbalance, there are more kicks. The porosity and permeability of the reservoir. So if you are drilling a well in Aramco in Saudi Arabia, the permeability is about 2,000 millidarcy. But if you're drilling in the North Sea, the average permeability is about 10 millidarcy. So you've got a difference of 2,000 and 10. So the kick will come into the well faster and bigger. Okay, that's why the porosity and permeability really important. And the sensitivity of the equipment. If you use old rigs, you may have a large kick and you cannot see it. So if you have expensive well, you must buy expensive equipment. The reaction time of people, this is very difficult. Many, many times, we had a situation in the North Sea, we had a kick of 300 barrels. And the drilling supervisor and the engineer, they did not see it. And the rig was bent down. This is because people did not react. So we need to teach people, and this is very important for educational purposes, we need to teach them reaction time. Reaction time when to see the kick, how long you flow the well, and how long it will take you to shut in the well and keep it safe. So that's what we call reaction time. And obviously, type of shutting procedure, soft, hard shutting, and also the risk. How quickly the influx comes in. Is it going to come slowly? You have control. If it comes fast, you have no control. So these are the elements which control the volume of influx. And unless the engineer understands those, he will be lost in the field. And we try now to teach these at the planning stage. So when the well is drilled on paper, correctly, it will be drilled in the field correctly. So that is the new thinking we have in the industry. You drill the well correctly on paper, you drill it correctly in the field. So when do you calculate kick tolerance? Okay, so the graphs on the right hand side, it shows you the fracture gradient, the green, the pore pressure, and then you see in the middle, or sorry, at about 16,000 feet. This is my well. I drilled this well, HPHT well. So you see at 16,000 feet, the strength of the rock, the fracture gradient, and the pore pressure are very close. So when you drill, you will have lost circulation 1 minute, the next minute you're going to have gain, kick, and so on. So you need to control the well. So we need to calculate kick tolerance after we do a leak-off test. I don't know how many people of you understand the word leak-off. Leak-off test is a test to find the strength of the rock. So instead of doing it in the lab, we actually do it in the field. We find the strength of the rock, and from it, we determine the mud weight which we need to use to drill the well. That's what's a leak-off test. If, before you drill, if you change the mud weight, you must recalculate kick tolerance. And if you have areas of high pressure, low pressure, high pressure, low pressure, you need to keep recalculating your kick tolerance. So, I'm going to go very quickly through the subject because I hope you get a copy of the presentation. I gave it to your people in PDF, so you can see everything I did. And then you'll have time to go through the numbers. So the engineering involved, basically very straightforward. Okay, you have a kick at the bottom, and you know the kick, and then you circulate the kick slowly until the kick reaches the shoe. So that is the weakest point in the well. And if the well is safe, then you continue circulating until the gas kick reaches the surface, which is on the extreme right-hand side. So that's the principle of kick tolerance. Now, what we do, and this is very important, when we do the calculations, we don't start at the bottom. We start in the middle. And this is why people are confused. The confusion is quite simple. They're saying, okay, you are trying to find out the kick comes from the bottom. Why do you start in the middle? Simple. We start in the middle because when the kick comes at the beginning, it comes in at the bottom. The well, as created by God, is strong, otherwise it will have no pressure. So when the kick comes in, it cannot fracture the well at the bottom. So it's only when you start circulating, pushing the kick all the way to the shoe, that's the middle diagram. This is where you want to find out if you're going to break it or not. That is why we start in the middle. So on the left hand side, the kick will be small, but as you start circulating, you reduce the pressure, so the kick will expand, Boyle's law, expand, and its height will increase from HT to H. So if we can find an equation that calculates H, the big H, and then just multiply by the annular area around the pipe, then we'll find the volume of the kick when it's at the shoe. Now, in mathematics, if you've got so many variables, you all know this from university, you have to keep one variable constant. So we are lucky because one variable which is constant is the fracture gradient at the shoe. That is why we did the leak-off. So this fracture gradient will be the maximum pressure we will allow it to be at the top of the gas bubble when it's at the shoe. So now we fix pressure and we calculate volume at the shoe. At the bottom of the hole, we know the formation pressure because we have equipment, we have plans, but we don't know the volume. So at point 2, which is at the shoe, we know volume and pressure is fracture gradient. At the bottom of the hole, we have formation pressure PF, but we don't know volume. So you apply Boyle's law, P1V1 over T1Z1 equals P2 V2, etc. And from it, you find V2. And that's the kick torus. Very simple, really. So that is the principle. So we're going to apply it first of all to this warp kick. Okay? And we start in the middle. And very basic engineering relation, which is basically the pressure at the shoe Px equals to the reduction in the pressure from Pf until the kick reaches the shoe. And that's the equation. Very simple. Notice in the equation there's Pg, which is the pressure in the gas bubble, because as the gas expands, the pressure in it will reduce. So we need to include this as a variable. So this is the definition. I'm not going to go through this in great detail because it's in your PDF file. So that's the equation, and then we will simplify this equation. Now this is where people get confused. So this gives you the height of the bubble at the shoe. And I have rearranged, so this is the first time I derived this equation in 1989 in this form. And I put it in my book, and we designed wells on that basis. Since then, people have modified this equation, and you'll see different versions, which is exactly the same as the first equation. So if you rearrange the equation in terms of formation pressure, that's the middle equation, and bottom hole pressure, you see this equation. And if you replace formation pressure minus BH, bottom hole pressure, by a factor or a term we call kick intensity. So this is the equation now used in stress check and other software. But essentially, the equation is derived from the first one. Okay? So in case you see it, they're all the same. So once you find H, you multiply by the capacity around the well bore, and this will give you the volume at the shoe, and then if you apply Boyle's law P1V1 equals P2V2, that will give you the volume at the bottom of the hole. Now this volume, which is V1, is what we refer to as kick torus. So So basically that is the mathematics. You're not going to hear any more mathematics. Okay? I thought I'll explain that to you in case you ask. So this is what we did. Start in the middle, and then we go to the bottom, and we find the pictorials. So this is an example of a real well in the North Sea. This is an high pressure, high temperature well. One of the wells I worked on. And I just want to show you how we actually calculate pictorials using the simple equation I gave you. Okay? So these are the inputs. You have the mud weight, you have the formation pressure, you have the fracture gradient and the temperature. And you simply put the values, very straightforward. Anyone with first year university can do this. And from this, you find the kick volume or the pictorials, 108 barrels. So we call this first approximation without temperature and compressibility factor. And if you apply compressibility factor, temperature, it will increase. So what it means basically, any kick which is more than 108, so you plan the well in the office, and you said the maximum strength of the well is 108 barrels. So you go to the field. If your kick is 100 barrels, it's okay. 50 barrels is perfect. But if it's 110 or 115, then you have problems. You have to decide, are you going to circulate the kick, or are you going to bullhead it? So this is where decision making becomes really important. That is the beauty of pictorials. A drilling pictorials is derived from slope pictorials. As we said, in a drilling situation, what you do, you drill into an area of high pressure, kick, you have no idea the pressure is high, the kick comes in, and then you see pressure at surface. Okay? So we apply the same principle, we use the same equation, because it's the same mathematics, and you get what we call H max. And if I apply the same, principle to a previous example, the only thing I'm going to change is I will make the formation pressure higher than the mud weight, because that is how you get a drilling kick. Understand? Slope kick is mud weight higher than formation pressure. A drilling kick, formation pressure is higher than mud weight. So the equation is still valid. You apply it, and if you go through the math, you find that your kick tolerance is now 44 barrels. Before it was 108. Okay? So that's the application of pictorials. Now, we're going to look at the example from the field. So the first one is, what does it mean if you've got a well with a high pictorials? So it means you can have high formation pressure, you can be confident. You can drill the well deeper. I don't know if you know this, but this is from my experience. Many situations where we finish the well and the geologist contacts us and he says, can you drill another 500 feet? I don't know if anyone here has faced this situation. And if that happens and your kick tolerance is on the margin, you can't do it. So this is the advantage of having a high kick tolerance, is that if people decide to drill deeper because they think there are more zones that could produce more at the bottom, then high kick tolerance will allow that. And of course you can have high mud weight as well. Now what happens if you've got smaller kick tolerance? It's the reverse. Okay? But one thing you need is to have close supervision. Your supervisor, your drilling engineer has to be good. So, if you look at the orange conclusion here, so kick tolerance is a safety tool. It indicates how close the mud weight to formation pressure, and if the well can be drilled deeper. So that's the first conclusion. It really is very important. And many people who don't understand this principle, they don't understand the advantage. So when do you require high kick tolerance? If you are drilling in Iraq or Saudi Arabia or in Iraq or in Abu Dhabi where the permeability is high, I mean I'm talking about permeability of 1 to 3 darcies. I don't know how many people understand how important permeability is. So 1 darcy is 1,000 millidarcy. A lot of wells around the world, they only have 5 or 10 millidarcies. So these wells have 3 darcies, which means the kick will come very fast. It means you've got little time to control the well. If you've got an old rig with low-tech equipment, you can't use low kick tolerance. You have to rely on high kick tolerance to say, you know, the well must have 50 barrels if I'm going to drill it, not 20 barrels. And of course, if you're drilling in the sea from a semi-submersible, because of the wave action, you've got to allow for a high kick tolerance in designing the well. Of course, for everything that is good, there are some bad things in it. So kick tolerance is exactly the same. So there are 3 situations which you cannot use kick tolerance. 3 situations. Number 1, slim hole. So in the oil industry now we're drilling very slim holes, 6 inch, 4.5 inch, 318, really small. Now, why kick tolerance is not applicable? So if you've got a 10 barrel in 17.5 inch hole, this will occupy a very short height. It's not going to be important in terms of pressures. But 10 barrels in 6 inch hole will occupy about 1,000 feet, or maybe greater than 1,000 feet. So the more gas height, the greater the pressure you see at surface. Because remember, if you've got a lot of gas, it means you've got less hydrostatic pressure from mud. Okay? That's very important. It is hydrostatic pressure that is important. So the more height of gas, the less control you have. Number 2 situation, when the hydrostatic pressure is deliberately less than the formation pressure. You actually go to the well and say, I'm going to have mud weight less than the formation pressure. So situations that, and the balance drilling or MPD, managed pressure drilling, you can't use kick tolerance. Because when you drill these wells, you are actually having kicks all the time. So it's not applicable. And then the last one, which I made up myself, is high deliverability wells. Wells that produce 30,000 barrels a day, gas wells that produce 150 standard cubic feet per day. These are very high deliverability wells. You get the kick before you even know it. So in these situations, you cannot apply kick tolerance. How am I doing with time? It's very difficult for me to practice this because all this is in my head. I don't look at these slides. That's a problem, you see. So I need to know. Anyway, I'll try and speed up. There are, of course, inbuilt safety factors. I'll just go through one. A lot of engineers think when the kick comes in, it comes in like a football. You know, Ronaldo or Messi's kicking it up the well. Well, it's not like this at all. So this kick will break up into small pieces. Okay? It will be a diffused kick. And because it's diffused kick, the pressure will go down. And that is a very important safety factor. Okay? Which we need to consider. And if you use the weight and weight method, you get less pressure than if you use the Jouller's method. Okay, so this is very specific. I will skip this. So, the reason I chose this topic because both IWCF and IADC were setting exam questions on kick tolerance. Okay? And some of these exam questions were not clear because not many people teach kick tolerance correctly. And we have made objections to the kind of wordings, to the kind of English used in formulating these questions. I can tell you now that kick tolerance has been correct from a fluid mechanics standpoint. It must be correct from a kick tolerance standpoint. So that's the first question answered. You cannot have the same equation in fluid mechanics where everything in the world is based on it, and then when you apply it to a different situation, kick tolerance, then you're going to say it's wrong. That is conflict of science. Science doesn't conflict. Engineering in particular is intact. You know, when you say stress is force over area, you cannot change this definition. Okay? So that's the answer to the first question. Hopefully, if anyone gets asked this question, you give them this answer. Now, the answer to the second question is a little bit tricky. Okay? So, what happens if you increase the mud weight? If you increase the mud weight, you are simply telling the formation pressure, I am stronger than you. As you increase the mud weight, you tell them, I am bigger than you, I'm stronger than you. So there is no possibility you're going to have more kicks unless the mud weight fractures the hole, in which case the science breaks down because there's no strength left. And the best way I can explain it to you is again to use engineering. So this is Darcy law. This is the basis of petroleum engineering, the basis of reservoir engineering, and no one can argue with it. So kick tolerance, if you look at this, uses Darcy law in reverse. And I want you to concentrate on this. It uses Darcy law in reverse. So instead of using PR being formation pressure, this is the mud weight. And instead of using PF, so this is the mud weight, and the PF is actual reservoir pressure. So as mud weight increases, the quantity, okay, of Q will be suppressed because it's in reverse. So there will be no flow from the reservoir into the well. There will be flow from the well into the reservoir. And this is why kick tolerance actually increases slightly because you are already over balance. And I have done an Excel sheet just to prove it to you. You can do it yourself using the same equation. And you can see right at the bottom, the blue arrows and the red arrows. You can see the red arrow shows that the well is fractured. The blue arrow shows that the kick tolerance increases ever slightly because you are already over balanced. So increasing the mud weight will increase kick tolerance, it will not reduce it. Very important. So these are the two questions which have been answered now. So very quickly I'm going to go how we apply it now in well design and well control. So you all see this when we design a well. We put red as the fracture gradient, green as the mud weight, and blue as the formation pressure. So that's your starting point. And then we then decide on how much kick tolerance we're going to design the well for. So if you've got 8.5-inch hole, you design it between 25 to 50 barrels. In other words, you say if you have a kick of 50 barrels, what are the pressures in the well? Yeah, that's the principle. And from that, we produce these lines. So I'm going to show you two lines. So if you have gas to surface, okay, that is a very simple assumption. You see the pressures are high, but if you apply kick tolerance, which is the orange, because you know the well cannot have more than 50 barrels, okay? Gas to surface, it means the well has infinite volume of kicks, which is wrong. We used this in the past, gas to surface, because we have no knowledge of kick tolerance. Now, nobody uses gas to surface unless it's a production well, okay? So just remember that. So now we have removed one element of well design from the literature completely. So by using the orange line, you can put these vertical lines, the blue and the red, which is the collapse strength and the best strength, and you can choose. So that's basically straightforward, it's not difficult. By the way, I did this graphical method in the 80s when I wrote my first book, Okay? And I see a lot of people applying it because it's quite straightforward. So instead of using an equation, you just do it graphically. Now, one thing you have to remember is that kick tolerance decreases as you drill deeper. As you drill deeper, the formation pressure increases. So kick tolerance will reduce with depth. So if you are at the beginning, your kick tolerance might be 100. At the bottom, it might be 25. So it's at the bottom that you use the kick tolerance, not at the top. Okay? And I put a table here. This is not from me, this is from ENI, which shows the kick tolerance that should be used for development wells, exploration, floater, bottom supported in jackup, or even land wells. So if you take, for example, 25 to 50 barrels, okay, for exploration wells, this will be dangerous. You really ought to use more. That's why I put a threat. Okay? This is quite a useful table for you guys if you're designing a well, to put your values there and then you decide whether the well is safe or not. You can also, most people like to express kicks in terms of maximum allowable pressure. So the vertical maximum allowable pressure. So that one will be the top point, okay, if you've got zero kick. And if you've got maximum kick, then the maximum allowable pressure will be zero. And you just join the point, and when you are in the field, so if you have a kick, let's say 15 barrels, you go up and say, well, that is the expected the pressure it serves. You can do this on paper in the office. That's the beauty of it. So you are prepared. And if it's programmed, then immediately you have the answers. You don't have to go through calculations or anything because it's your well. You enter its data. I like this. I did this for my first HPHT well in the North Sea in terms of kick intensity. So I'd like to plot kick intensity against kick tolerance. Okay? It's quite a useful graph because it shows, for example, your kick intensity is maximum if your kick tolerance is 0 and your kick intensity is 0 when kick tolerance is max. So that is basically the principle of doing it. And for your benefit, I'm not going to go through this. I've shown you how to produce this graph, really straightforward. Okay. Once again, you're not going to see it anywhere, so that's the first time you see it in this presentation. So I haven't published this in a textbook or in a paper. So you are the first people on earth to see this. Okay. So this is how you produce your kick intensity graph. And this is quite good for underbalance drilling as well. Okay? And I advise people to update this every 50 feet, so you know where you are. The best application, so this is the last section, is in well control. After all, this is safety tool. And I, again, myself and many people in the industry now program this in an Excel sheet and they update it while they are on the rig sites. Okay? But to do this, there's a little bit of mathematical manipulation. Not hard, quite straightforward really. Okay? So you start with the gas load, P1, B1, P1, and then you do some simplifications for the Z factors. Now, you always see this factor n. Now, when the kick is at the bottom of the hole around the BHA, it will occupy a long height because the annular space is small. As it moves up, the space becomes bigger, so it will shrink. And once it shrinks, the pressure goes down. So we allow this, especially in deep wells, because it has very, very profound effect. So combining these with the first equation I derived, and if you do all the simple mathematics, you end up with the pressure of the gas at any point in the well bore. So that's why I call Px, and A is the factor. And the beauty of this equation is that once you program it in your Excel sheet, you can produce a graph anytime. And it's quite simple, really. So this is from a well with a kick. So the kick was 600 psi on the drill pipe and 860 psi on the annulus. It's one of the wells I worked on. and the volume of the influx was 20 barrels. And we did this on the Excel sheet using this equation I just showed you. So we have the kick at the bottom and then the shoe on the other surface. And so depending on how much volume, this is all done on Excel sheet, by the way. So if you pump 0 volume, you get the same values as you shut in. If you pump 93 barrels, then the pressure at the top of the gas bubble is 5,500, and the pressure at surface is 793. So you know pressure at surface has to be less than the maximum allowed annulus pressure. So that is like a control. So this is in terms of numbers. And of course you can also use the weight and weight method if you got 2 different mud weights, exactly the same. And then finally come with this graph. And we find, so when we teach people, when we consult, is that this graph is used by most people. So on the bottom, you'll see the surface pressure, and you can see the red is the driller's method because it gives you high pressure, and the blue is the weight and weight method. And on the top, you have the shoe pressure. And of course, then I have missed, there's a straight line which shows the shoe fracture. And as long as these lines below the shoe fracture, you are safe and you can circulate the kick. So, I went through this very quickly because I want to give you time to ask me questions. So in conclusion, I presented to you the theory and application of kick tolerance in well design, well drilling in terms of kick intensity, and well control. I've also answered every question that you used to criticize the method and find faults in it. And I gave you scientific reasoning for all the questions that have been raised. So this is the end of my formal paper. I don't know if you are allowed to ask questions, but I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
For questions, the questions will be Turkish and they will translate to English.
Yes, no problem. Can I have this?
Okay, but the first question is going to be in English.
This is the first time in my life, today, I've used these.
I think it's not going to be yet, Dr. Rabia, because the question is going to be in English.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to ask in English if you can copy, Dr. Rabia. Yes? Yes, so thank you very much.
My friend.
Yes, so you're not going to use it yet, so the question is going to be in English, if it's okay, by the director, so I'm going to ask in English. Okay, Dr. Rabia, thank you very much for this excellent presentation. Actually, kick tolerance is very, very important, and we know that all the international companies are applying this. I'm not sure if in our country this technique is being used and applied, but none that was being applied as I was working back in about 20 years ago, because it's very important, kick tolerance. But my question is about your observation about what happened in some of the previous well-controlled incidents. What is your recommendation to an audience such as ours? For example, in Mokando, what happened and what should people be doing in order not to face the same problem? Because if it happens, it's going to be a big disaster and it can affect economies and besides the economy, the future of the industry as well. So if you can elaborate a little bit about this, your recommendations, because are going to be very, very important for all of us here, and we're definitely going to apply it in our future work. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if you I don't know if you all know about the Mokando disaster 10 years ago. That's when BP lost 1/3 of its value in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, for legal reasons, I cannot go through all the ins and outs. The Mokando incident did not happen during drilling. What happened, they were doing what we call negative flow tests. All I can tell you is that the test was not executed correctly. And this is why, I don't know if you have time, but I have given Dr. Bullant a copy of my book, and in it, I explained how you do inflow tests. Okay, so if anybody wants to know how the test should be done correctly, scientifically, graphically, it's all there, and this is yours. So first of all, that's the Macondo. Macondo was not a drilling situation, but we have a database of all the blowouts, and very, very difficult. But I can tell you, 70% of all blowouts are swap kicks, which people don't understand. They think it should be drilling kicks. It's actually wells you know, but you haven't designed them correctly. Okay, so the majority of them we see are swap kicks. There are many other reasons, but one thing we know for sure, if you design the well correctly, and if you use all the 3 methods I gave you with the graphs, and they are right in front of you, there is no way you can make a mistake, because each method corrects the second method. Are you with me? You know, like you do a check, when you do things in mathematics, you derive an equation, and then you say, I'm going to check it. Okay, so you either go back in reverse, or you do something, okay? So the 3 methods I gave you, they are what we call in English foolproof. You cannot go wrong, okay? But, of course, human behavior, you can't, you know. I mean, we have situations where people close the shear rams instead of the pipe rams, you know, where we have people not checking the mud. You know, they let water run in the tank and the mud becomes diluted. We have many human mistakes. So these are very difficult to analyze mathematically. You can only teach people. And what I found in my life, I spent all my life working in the oil industry. I haven't done any other job. And I worked, I don't know if you know an introduction, in Aramco, Abu Dhabi, in the North Sea, etc. And I found gradually the new generations are becoming more interested in the actual application of the engineering. In my days, when I first started, they used to laugh at me when I used to use mathematics to analyze things. They used to call me the professor. Okay? And I thought, why did they call me professor? I'm only trying to solve an engineering problem, you know? And then gradually, of course, I became operations man. So, but nowadays, people from India, from China, from the Middle East, they come to us and they're open-minded, you know, they want to learn. So we had Indian people coming recently to my center in England, and we did wellbore stability. And these guys did not finish at 5. I mean, they stayed till 7 and 8 o'clock in the evening. They made me tired, you know. So they were really interested. So that shows there is a difference in attitude. So the new generation is really is our future. Okay? So it's a long answer.
Başka soru var mıydı acaba? Yok mu?
Hold on.
Yanlış bir kelime etmemek için Türkçe olarak yapacağım, konuşacağım. Hüseyin Rabia. Hüseyin Rabia, bilim insanlığı yanında aynı zamanda toplumdaki hassasiyetleri dile getiren, sosyal medyada paylaşan, özellikle masum Filistin halkına karşı Siyonist katliamı devamlı lanetleyen, paylaşan bir bilim insanıdır. Buraya geldiği için çok teşekkür ediyorum. Bizle bilgilerini paylaştığı için çok teşekkür ediyorum. İnşallah daha fazla Türkiye'den bilgilerini paylaşır. Bizlerle benim kitabımın çoğunluğu Hüseyin Rabia'dan aldığım referanslarla yazılmıştır. Kitabı için de çok teşekkür ediyorum. Sağ olun ve teşekkür ederim.
Anladığım kadarıyla başka soru yok. Var mı? Buyurun.
İngilizce olarak sorabilir miyim?
Sıkıntı yok. Hangi dilde konuşmak isterseniz.
This question will be in English, so you can take off your headphones. So, I once would like to welcome you again to be with us and have such a great presentation, especially in well control. Because as an ex-drilling engineer worked in fields more than a decade, I regard that well control is as important as drilling a successful well. Maybe one of the most, maybe the most important criteria for us, for engineers. You mentioned in your speech that how many of our audience know about this phenomenon. So I think many of us know about this because this well-controlled education is actually given to the engineers in every year. We do have all certificate engineers from IWCF. But what I realized is a different type of topic I want to enlarge more about in my question. So, as a drilling engineer, I understand that we apply the leak of tests and formation integrity tests in each section of well, and each time we change the mud properties. So this is the rule that we conduct. But in the field, we like to have ton of rules. So we do have a phenomena called a mud window or a drilling window or a safety margin. We apply 100 or 200 psi safety margin when we apply our weight of our drilling mud. But once I shifted my career from drilling engineering to the production or development side, I realized that applying too much overbalance is actually harming the reservoir, especially when we reach the production zone, and it is very important. So my question is, I wonder how are your insights about having a balanced kick tolerance or having an exact calculation in kick tolerance when we apply in the drilling field? How can we do it? How can we achieve to have an excellent kick tolerance without calculations or with less calculations? How can we teach our drilling crew to react when they see a well kick at the same time?
What's your name?
My name is Fatih Pınarcı. I'm from the Petroleum Affairs.
Okay. This is very, very good question. I don't know how many people heard it correctly. He's basically asking what is the best mud weight so you cause little damage to the formation. Because you remember, when we drill a well, we want to produce oil or gas. We don't drill a well for fun, you know. It's not like going out for a meal or a picnic. Now, to find the correct mud weight, really, there are two things you have to do. You have to carry out a leak-off or FIT. FIT is formation integrity test, where you actually do the entire envelope. Leak-off test is just to the leak-off point, and the limit test is below. So without this, you really cannot tell. So that's number one. Number two, to find out what mud weight you need is to establish what we call a mud window. So the mud window, you have to have, on the left-hand side, you have to have what we call collapse line. What is the minimum mud weight to prevent the hole from collapsing? And that requires wellbore stability. This is why nowadays big companies have to teach drilling engineering wellbore stability. Because in the past, people thought wellbore stability is only for mining engineers. But in actual fact, wellbore stability, very, very important for drilling engineers. And that is why we, as consultants, we spend a lot of time now looking at reports. So from the wellbore stability, you find the collapse and you find the fracture. And it will vary every 10, 15 feet, and you'll have a window. Now the other thing is the drilling practice. Because when you pull out of hole and you make a connection, you're going to cause swarming. The temperature itself is going to make the mud thinner, so you'll have less hydrostatic. So all these calculations now we can do correctly now. We can correct all those. And this will then give you a correction factor, okay, and it will tell you what is the hydrostatic pressure required to control the well. Now, to come to the what we call ballpark figure, i.e. an approximate figure, And when I first started, we used to use 500 psi overbalance. Okay? I worked in Russia. I worked in a place called Komi Arctic. I was the operations manager, and overbalance was 1,500 psi. And there was a reason, because they didn't want to have kicks. So 1,500 was their overbalance, which meant every well was damaged. Okay? So I changed it, obviously. I reduced it to about 250 psi. It's obvious. So unless you do calculations, you won't be able to tell, because sometimes even 200 psi overbalance is not enough. Sometimes 100 psi is good. It depends on your practices, on your mud window. So this is why I say engineering is easy to teach. Because it's logical. Logical. Anything which is logical, people will accept. You heard today when I talk about kick tolerance, there was nothing clever about it. You know, I didn't give you complex mathematics, vessel functions, or whatever clever equations. I gave you very simple engineering, and this you can teach and you can learn. So wellbore stability the same. So that is what is lacking in the industry as of today, everywhere in the West, in Europe, in the States, here. In the Middle East, they don't even, unfortunately, they don't even listen to us when we talk about wellbore stability, because they think it's something nice, but it's actually fundamental to well design. Okay, you master wellbore stability, you master your mud weight window. Okay, sure. English or Turkish?
Yeah, English.
English, okay.
Myself, Rajiv Singh from India, doing a drill exploration agency. In the context of coal drilling, we are in business mostly in coal drilling. The depth is maximum of 1200 to 1500 meters. So, in this context, kick tolerance refers to maximum amount uncontrolled influx or kick. That can be safely managed.
Sorry?
That can be safely managed.
Okay.
Yeah, but and circulated out of wellbore without causing formation. If this kick tolerance study may be useful for this depth or for our coal drilling also.
Of course, I mean there's no argument here. Kick tolerance, you can use it anywhere where there's a possibility of a kick. In coal mining, you have a lot of possibility of methane coming from coal seams. You know, especially if you've got a lot of cleating, etc. In the North Sea, we have coal seams in the well.
Yes.
And they cause stuck pipe, they cause many problems, you know. So any well, basically any well, with a possibility of a kick tolerance can be applied. Basically that's the rule I can tell you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you very much for your deep insight on the kick tolerance. I am Shankar Nagachari. I am again from Coal India Limited, from the same company. Adding to his own question, the earlier question, you have given us the understanding about some kind of wells those are being drilled for oil and exploration of oil and gas maybe. So, in the same context, are there some thumb rules related with the depth and diameter of holes that gives a good shorthand idea of kick tolerance?
Yes, yes.
So basically,
I already said,
yes.
Slim holes,
yeah.
Kick tolerance doesn't apply.
Yeah, does not apply. Yeah.
No. So you go 6 inch. Anything below 6 inch, forget it.
Okay.
Because the kick will be so huge. It will go beyond the casing shoe. So there is logic. That's why I told you kick tolerance is a logical tool.
Okay. And then again, is there any relation with the depth?
No. I told you. You can relate it to depth, but it's derived from the basic definition. The kick volume, which you can circulate without fracturing the shoe. Yeah. So I have derived the equation, but there's no point in using it because you have to go to the original equation, okay? Original equation, okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Değerli konuklar, değerli delegeler, oturumumuz 1 saat buldu. Sanıyorum başka bir soru yok. Kendisine bir plaket ve bir sertifika sunacağım. Ondan sonrasında oturumu kapatacağım. Fakat bu kadar uzun tutmamın sebebi, böyle şahsiyetleri her gün yanı başımızda bulamıyoruz. Bu fırsatı kaçırmamak için oturumun uzun sürmesine müsaade ettim. Ayrıca da gerçekten bir uluslararası ortam sağladı bize bu oturum. Kendisine tek tek teşekkür ediyorum. Siz de sabırla bu oturumu dinlediğiniz için 1 saat boyunca her birinize tek tek teşekkür ediyorum. Oturumu kapatıyorum. Kendisine sertifikasını ve plaketini sunacağım. Teşekkür ederim.
Güzel